Welcome back to My Seminary Life. I'm your host, Brandon Knight, and today is this year's final edition of Fish FryDays. Like I said, I believe we'll be running it back next year on an idea that I have, but until then, this is going to be our final talk when it comes to Fridays. It is Good Friday, the darkest day in humanity's history, the day we killed God, the day that Jesus laid down his life for us. And the thought that I want to conclude this year's devotional series on is reflecting on the totality of the cross. I talked about how with the previous episode, I believe it was, about how, trying to focus on staying here in the moment. Actually, maybe that wasn't, I don't remember if I actually talked about that here on the show or not. That was part of my Palm Sunday message of wanting to stay here in the moment, of not rushing ahead to what's coming on Sunday. Because although that is the good part, and I feel like I do have to say a little bit about Easter as well here, for the moment, we're going to stay right here at the foot of the cross with Jesus hanging there, dying, dead. Tozer talks about a lot in his devotional book From the Grave. That final week of the devotions all revolve around the totality of the cross, how finished it is, because that is, of course, what Jesus is famously recorded as saying, one of the sayings that he has from the cross, but probably the most remembered from his cross sayings is, "It is finished." Just the aspect of just in death, it's final. There's nothing that survives. I guess you could talk about how, the brain activity for a little bit, or the nails keep growing, the hair keeps growing for a while, but by and large, when there is an absence of life, it's done. It is finished. And that makes me think about how Jesus tells us to pick up our cross and follow him daily, right? This idea of dying to self that also comes up in Scripture. This idea of just the totality of our own, not spiritual death, that state that we are found in when we are saved by Jesus, but rather that state that we are in after we are saved. We are now completely dead to ourselves, completely dead to the world. There is something new going on here. The totality of the cross, the totality of being devoted to Jesus is an all-consuming thing. Again, I often come back to Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. The death of Jesus, the being baptized into his death, is a total devotion. It is a total death. To abide in the vine of Jesus and Jesus abiding in us. I've talked about it here before on the show that when you look at the vine and when you look at a vine and its branches, its leaves, you can't necessarily see perfectly where one stops and the other begins. They are so entwined within each other. And this is the idea that I'm sitting here with of the totality of the cross, the totality of who we are now and who we belong to. You think of Romans 12:1 and 2, where we are told to offer ourselves as living sacrifices, this consumed burnt offering before the Lord. Our devotion, our alliance is first and foremost to God, to Jesus, because he has died for us. His life is now ours. We live in him, and he lives in us. We are so entwined with him. The call to follow Jesus is an all-consuming call. This is who we are now. And yes, as much as I want to stay here in the moment of the death of Jesus' death on the cross, it is hard to talk about the totality of the cross and what that requires of us, that calls us to do, without looking at the resurrection on Easter. Because we are raised to new life. This new life is part of this totality of Jesus' death. He now has this new life. And we have this new life as well. This is a present kingdom way to be. We are now living in his presence, living in his kingdom. How do we do that? Honestly, go back and re-listen to all these episodes. Because a lot of what it looks like to live in the kingdom looks like what we have been talking about over these past few weeks. And as we draw this Lenten season to a close and turn and celebrate what is coming here on Easter Sunday, we know that we are moving into a time of new life, new joy, new celebrations, to rejoice and to be glad, for Jesus is alive and we are made new and alive in him totally. But let us not forget what this time period also means. It is by death that we are brought new into this new life. The totality of death and the totality of resurrected life is the life that we live now. So may we go forth knowing that we belong to him, and that as we belong to him, that calls us to live a life that looks like his. Not one that is defined by pop culture Christianity, political Christianity, but one that looks like his life. That does have political ramifications, that does have secular interaction, that does have joy, mercy, love, justice. May we look to Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, as we move into this new time period of joy, of celebration. And may we continue to reflect on the reality that we now belong to him, not as servants, but as friends. And honestly, that's all I really have for you today. Probably the shortest. I think MSL has had some pretty short episodes in the past. I don't think we've had anything this short in a very long time. But that's really all I have to say on this. This is the final Fish Friday of this year, again, which means this coming Saturday, next Saturday, we are returning back to our regular Saturday morning time slot and kicking things off back on Saturdays with the 4-year anniversary special. The show turned 4 years old back in March, and so we're kicking things off with the 4-year anniversary special with me sitting back to reflect on one thing that I say often here on the show is I reserve the right to change my mind later, because I'm a student. I'm the forever student, and so I reserve the right to change my mind later. And there's something that my mind has been changed on a lot over the past 4 years. I think back on where I was when the show first started 4 years ago and where I'm at now, and there is something that has changed drastically, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that in next week's special. Thank you all for listening. Happy Easter to you all. Enjoy your Easter festivities and whatever else you may be going on in your life right now. If you haven't yet already, please rate and review this show wherever you get your podcasts. Pass this episode along to a friend, and check out the other great shows here on the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network, including the Whole Church Podcast, Why I Don't Like, and my sister podcast, Kung Fu Pizza Party, where I talk about all things martial art pop culture. Very fun, very different. The episode that just came out is me talking about books, doing a little bit of a project of trying to build the martial artist Bible, the ultimate definitive martial art library reading list. And yeah, I'm fully aware of when you have a show that plays into the pizza gimmick, that to have an episode about books kind of lends itself to some kind of book it related project, but I haven't come up with anything yet. Anyway, thank you all for listening. And for one last time this year, this is Brandon signing off, reminding you as always that theology is best served with a side of coleslaw.